Hello?
Hello, Jim. It's Sam Fisch with the Fish Bowl.
Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Not too bad. It's been a long week.
Awesome, awesome. Are you ready? Or
Sure. How long do you want me for?
if we could, I guess maybe go 45 minutes if that's okay. I have like
Yep.
a lot. I am a big fan.
Ah, well then you'll get 45 minutes minimum.
Okay. Awesome, awesome. Well, first off, thank you for taking the time to swim in the bowl with me.
I'm delighted. As long as it's kind of lavatory bowl, I'm fine.
Well, it's a fish bowl, so I hope the temperature is just right.
Excellent. Excellent.
Awesome, awesome. Well, my first question for you is what got you interested in film?
In film, I think I was always interested in film until I was very young. Probably television more than film when I was quite young because that was just the beginning of the television era. It was still in black and white when I was very young. And then as you get older, I don't know when I went to my first film. I was probably like 5 or 6. And I think Mary Poppins might have been one of the first films I went to. And so then it's sort of like most kids, it's magical in that. I got interested in theatre shortly afterwards. It was pantomime, which is the Christmas show. And I think that was the thing that got me, is that it seemed like a whole other magical world.
Awesome, awesome. I have to just share. I mean, I went to school for screenwriting, and I have a couple scripts published on Amazon, and have been doing really well in some screenwriting competitions. And for me, my first memory is seeing Back to the Future Part 3
Uh-huh.
on the big screen, and I was 3 years old.
Wow.
And
Scary.
it was like a really, I mean, for me, it was like this is like a magical thing.
Yeah.
Film and TV, can take you away to, a fantasy world that, allows you to escape from reality and just, go into whole other different directions.
Yeah, yeah. That's young. 3.
Yeah, yeah. I've also, with this new Batman movie coming out, I've been seeing on Facebook people posting stuff like the McDonald's merchandise from Batman Returns.
Hmm.
And I have a specific memory of being in a McDonald's and seeing that advertised. And that was 1992.
Wow. And you're still alive after eating at McDonald's. That's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, let's not talk about me too much. But
Why not? It's your show. I've been talking about me for the last 2 weeks non-stop, so, so I'm sick of me. Let's talk about you.
well, you're opening a can of worms there. I wanted to ask you about Lethal Weapon 2
Yes.
because that is actually the first movie that I remember seeing you in. And I'm basically like obsessed with the cast of The Expendables, specifically like Schwarzenegger and Stallone. But I am a huge Mad Max nut. I love Mel Gibson. I love Danny Glover. The whole like action stuff of the 80s and 90s is just, I'm obsessed with. And I
Well,
was wondering, what was it like working with Danny Glover and Joe Pesci?
I'll tell you first of all why it was the first film you saw me in, because it was the first film I ever did.
Awesome.
I'd only done TV and film and theatre up so that was my first ever film, and it was weird because I had that one scene. I was a South African envoy, and it was a nice little scene, but it became kind of more memorable than it probably deserved to be because one of my lines, Joe Pesci kept repeating it during the movie, and so it became a sort of almost de facto catchphrase for the movie. And the line is, when Danny Glover's trying to emigrate to South Africa, Pesci's help, and I'm explaining why he can't possibly do that because of the days of apartheid. And I look at him absolutely kind of open-jawed when he says, I want to go to South Africa. And I say, why not? And I go, because you're black, which is in a heavy South African accent, as you're black. And that became, yeah, it was weird. I mean, people to this day, my first ever film, and I have a catchphrase, brilliant. And then to this day, I have people, who meet me and go, but you're black, or because you're black. And more often than not, they are themselves actually black. So it's, yeah, I met a very heavy-duty rapper once. He was like, kind of fairly bored meeting an old fart like me, and then suddenly his face lit up, and he went, oh, but you're black.
Fantastic. That's awesome. What was the late great Richard Donner like?
Well, Richard was wonderful, and I never answered your question about what it was like working with Danny and Joe, but Richard was fantastic. One of the things I say in the book is that he's the most masculine man I've ever met, in a very non-toxic way. I met him again a few years later socially, 3 or 4 times, and I remember saying to him once, I want to be you when I grow up. He just was this kind of incredibly charismatic, warm, just guy. He was a guy. And he was great. He was very kind of loose and fun. I obviously didn't work with Mel Gibson, so I can't give you any gossip on that. But Danny and Joe were great. What was supposed to be, I think, booked for 3 days to do that scene, which is quite a lot, really, scene. But I ended up being paid for 7 days because Joe got sick, so I kept bumping it. So I really kind of scored on my first ever movie, got paid for 4 more days than I should have, and got a catchphrase out of it.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I've been following everything Glover and Gibson have done since. That was before, Gibson was the director.
Yeah.
And more just the star. And I think he's a wonderful director. A phenomenal director. I mean, his last film, the World War II one, was really, really good. And I'll pay to see anything he does.
Yeah.
Another small role, but very memorable one for me is Independence Day.
Yes. That was the other top-grossing movie of its year that I was in. Yeah, I don't remember an enormous amount about that other than shot it in Utah. It was in the Middle East, the desert.
Yeah.
Shot it in Utah. I remember enjoying Shear, I think he used the name John Matthews. And all I really remember about that is how much fun Roland Emmerich is mad. Completely demythized, if that's a word. I think I've just created a word. The whole concept of what being German was for me. He had such a wonderful sense of humor. He was so kind of non-Teutonic in a cliche way. And he was like a really enthusiastic teacher. Just bounced. I really appreciate it. Again, it was fun to be around and fun to be in. Made it. Didn't take anything too seriously. Just let the actors kind of get on with it.
Very cool. I'm a big fan of his films as well. And the crazy thing to me is that I'm very big on like the paranormal and alien extraterrestrial phenomenon, and everything that I've been like reading on ancient history and stuff that they've been finding in Egypt and around the world and in Mexico and everything. It's just mind-boggling to me because his film Stargate kind of like predicted all that stuff.
Right.
I'm also, again, back to Schwarzenegger. Everything they've been finding on Mars, I'm waiting for Total Recall to predict, Mars.
Right. Yes. I think Independence Day was a wonderfully entertaining film. It was very clever because it was sort of appealed to a wide audience. I think it was a film that women enjoyed as much as men. That kind of film is usually territory. Made it kind of very accessible.
Yeah. There's something for everyone in the film.
Yeah.
And, there's a love story, there's drama, there's kids.
It was a great script. I mean,
Yeah.
Dean Devlin wrote it with, and he was fun too. And I think I worked with him again, TV show, and then I moved up to this house in the Hollywood Hills and discovered he owned a house very close by up the street. I think they were both just really good people. They seemed like really.
That's awesome. I mean, they're also some of my big inspirations for how my own style of writing and everything has evolved. And kind of like, where I want to be a filmmaker in the future.
And where are you based?
I am in Pittsburgh, PA.
Uh-huh.
AKA the land of zombies.
Is it really? I don't know.
It is. George Romero, the late great George Romero, king of Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. That was all filmed in Pittsburgh.
Wow, never been to Pittsburgh. I've been to Philadelphia.
Oh, you gotta come down. It's a fun town.
Yeah. I don't know why I haven't. I've been to. That's eluded me.
Well, there's a lot of filming going on here now with Netflix and a lot of other stuff, so I wouldn't imagine it being without being in the realm of possibility. But I guess on the subject of sci-fi and everything, a movie I really liked you in, and it's kind of like an underrated gem at this point, is She Creature.
Haha, yes. I think that was made for HBO, wasn't it?
It was. It was part of their they did like a creature feature like series where they made like I think like 4 or 5 movies, and it was done in like the style of like the 50s like creature features. And
Yeah, yeah.
She Creature was, in my opinion, the best one that they did, and I actually own the action figure uh, of the She Creature
Oh,
because
Carla
I'm a
Gugino.
big collectible.
Yes, she was great in it, and Sebastian, her husband, directed it. It was a fun one to do. I remember Rufus Sewell was really good too. Boy, yeah, that was a while ago. Got to go crazy in that. Got to go a bit mad. Actually, the last thing I did last November was sort of the first time since I've done a similar role with the captain of the Queen Mary in a supernatural thriller called the Queen Mary, and I played the captain of the ship, and slightly similar arc, but yeah, I remember staring at the naked mermaid or the topless, but that was left embedded.
Awesome. I'm a big like sci-fi, like I love the B grade. The B grade horror and sci-fi to me is where all the best gems are at.
Huh. I don't think I've done too many, to be honest with you. I don't sort of a genre I've dipped my toe into.
Well, for me, I'm definitely a fan of your comedy stuff. What what I one of the things I really wanted to talk about was A Mighty Wind and Best in Show.
Yes, the first two Christopher Guest photos, yeah. That was an interesting one because I had started writing by then, and my writing career had sort of taken off, and I was quite busy on that front, and I was a bit nervous because I hadn't done much acting. I thought this career has been cancelled without it was not by mutual consent. And then I got a call out of the blue from Eugene Levy, who I knew socially. And he said, look, we're doing another film a bit like Waiting for Guffman, but it's about a dog show. And I said to Chris Guest, who I'd actually met Chris a couple myself, just social. He said, I was saying to Chris that I thought that a great partner for Fred Willard as the commentator of the dog show at the end, the last third of the movie, would be you. And I was like, oh, okay, well, thank you. And he said, well, would you come in and meet with Chris, at Castle Rock? And so I went in, and it was a really uncomfortable meeting because both Chris and Eugene are quite, well, how should I put this, introverted or socially uncomfortable. So I found myself sort of sitting there on the couch with them at their desks, filling the sort of uncomfortable pauses and silences by just sort of babbling. And I don't know what I was babbling about, a bit like now. And then after about 10 minutes, I thought, I think I need to. So I got up and said, great meeting you. Here's my a DVD of what I do, of some of my work. We were to carry those in those. And I left. And I was driving home thinking, could I have handled that better? It was really strange. I liked them both very much. It just felt very, very uncomfortable. And anyway, the phone rang in the car, and it was Chris Guest. His inimitable, understated, quiet voice said, if you'd like to. And that was it. So I then subsequently had quite a problem because I had a show I had created for the BBC called Too Much Sun with Alex Jennings, Mark Addy, and believe it or not, Lee Majors. And it was a half-hour sitcom. We were doing 6 episodes, the sort of standard BBC One series length, and it clashed. And I said to Chris, I don't know if I can do this because you want me for 3 days to shoot on Best in Show in Vancouver, and I'm actually running the show in London. I'm not in it, but I'm running it. And anyway, we managed to work it out. The BBC were very good at accommodating, and which they're not all. And they said, okay, we'll figure this out. So what I did was, on the Monday morning, we had the table read, as one does of a sitcom, and I gave my notes to the actors and the director, and I went straight to Heathrow Airport, got on a plane, flew to Vancouver, which is about, and had dinner that night with Eugene, Chris, and Fred Willard, who I'd never met. And we sort of talked a little and explained what was going on, and then they asked me to leave for 10 minutes because they wanted to talk to Fred Willard about what he was going to do and how he was going to do it, because they'd written a detailed outline, but our stuff, they'd sort of mostly said, well, this guy, says these sort of things and he's completely ignorant, and then the other guy sort of knows a lot about dogs and is on track. And that was about it. So then I came back and they said, oh, by the way, tomorrow we're not going to work tomorrow because we're running a bit behind. So you got a day off, which I was thrilled about because I was so jet lagged. And then at the end of Tuesday, I got another call from the director saying we're still a bit behind, so we can have Wednesday off as well. And then the same thing happened on Wednesday night, and they said we're going to have to do it on Friday. And I said, I'm really sorry, but I've actually got to be on a plane on Thursday night to get back to England to be there for the dress rehearsal, the tech run-through, and the taping in the evening of my show there. So we shot everything on the Thursday of that week, from pre-dawn to post-dusk. I think they'd probably do a 12-hour day. And it was just me and Fred sitting there in an empty stadium because they'd already shot all the dog show. And there was a bunch of extras behind us to make it look like it was full. And we would watch some footage of each of the categories in the dog show. And then Chris would say, okay, let's talk about that. And then off Fred would go and I would try and follow. And then Chris maybe wouldn't show us some footage. We'd say, okay, now something's happening here, and the hound category, so just talk about that. And off Fred would go, and I would start with something sort of fairly straight and factual and knowledgeable about dogs, which I had to learn a lot about. And I kind of was literally just trying to keep my wits about me because I was still jet-lagged. And I had this, rambunctious monkey driving this car I was in. And the monkey was drunk and blindfolded. So I was sort of following this madman who was a genius with all the stuff he was coming up with. And I sort of very quickly figured out I've got to basically be the ultimate straight man. And I'd never really done that. I mean, I guess I had in certain things, certain plays and things, but I generally was a bit more of the clown in a double act. So I kind of just learnt on that film how to do that, and I realized that as funny as Fred was, that I could make him doubly funnier if I didn't try and compete and didn't try and do jokes and was just very straight and had some sort of arc where I would be amused slightly at first, then completely bemused by and then rather annoyed by it, in fact quite annoyed. But I can't show much of that because we're live on television and I've got a show, we're doing this show. So it gave me a great kind of arc to play. And if anybody who knows anything about comedy knows that a straight man, if you're smart, you can get as many laughs as the clown person if your reactions are right and if you just don't play too much. And that was a great revelation to me. And when I saw the film, and Chris had edited it so brilliantly and put it all in sequence in that way, I changed my style of acting, I think, after that, because I realized even if I wasn't the straight man, even if I was more proactive, there was a way of acting with a small a that appealed to me more than working too hard. And I think I've carried that ever since, with a rare exception where I've come to the top and broken that rule. But yeah, Best in Show was a turning point for me on a lot of levels as an actor, for me personally. And it kind of was a calling card. It reminded people I was still alive and introduced me to other people who didn't know I existed even. So that was a nice kind of job to do. That was a very long answer, wasn't it? It's a good one.
That's very good. Very good.
Yeah, and I talk about it, in the book, and sadly, my dear Fred became a dear friend 5 times a year at least, and sadly he died when I was writing the book, age of 86, and really, I think America, the world, has lost one of the great comedy acts that I've ever in my lifetime. He absolutely mastered a certain type of boorish, foot in his mouth, just this kind of bull in a china shop American that was both lovable and, ridiculous. And he did it brilliantly. And what was so impressive about that persona that Fred created was that he was the exact opposite in real life. He was very thoughtful, very, quite serious, actually, and very introverted. So, a conversation with him in real life was diametrically opposed to those sort of roles that you see in film. And I found that fascinating.
That's very interesting. I was a huge fan of his as well, and was definitely upset when he passed, and
Yeah, I think everybody was. It was a great loss. He hadn't been terribly well in the last few years, but he was working right up to the end. Just did it and did it and did it. Huge admiration. It was very, very fun.
That's awesome.
And then Mighty Wim was 3 years later. It was generally 3-year gaps. That was a very different film. There I actually got to play almost the opposite. I was someone who was himself, kind of putting his foot in it and a more unaware person. Not in that same mold, but he was a very sort of boring English a model train fanatic and a catheter salesman who had no kind of sensibility toward his wife, which was Catherine O'Hara's musical abilities, sort of a very different character that I got to outrageous.
Awesome. On the subject of your writing and Eugene Levy, another film I wanted to talk to you about was The Man.
Yes.
And I mean, how did that come about? And I mean, what was your process for writing for Eugene?
Well, interestingly enough, that's the first time, and I've been doing interview after interview after interview for the last 2 weeks because I don't know if we even mentioned I'm doing this because I've got a book called Caught with My Pants Down and Other Tales from a Life in Hollywood. Just got to get that plug in there right away. Right. Which is on March 23rd. It is available everywhere in bookstores, Amazon, whatever. And I don't know when this is being heard by people, but the ebook is available now, and the audiobook and the print copy will be available to pre-order on March 13th onwards. So March 23rd, big day. Caught with My Pants Down and Other Tales from a Life in Hollywood. Anyway, what was the question? Oh, yes, The Man. Back to that. That was a break for a commercial, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
We're back. And so, yes, The Man was an interesting one. I'll tell you why. And again, I write about this in the book at some length. The Man I wrote, I think it was the second or third script I wrote. I'd already sold a couple of things. And I wrote that as a sort of action comedy buddy thing. And then my wife at the time did some rewriting on it, and we ended up sort of writing it together, the third draft. And it got made, I believe, 17 years after I wrote the first draft. It had been optioned by different people who had come very close to being made by so-and-so and very close to being made by somebody else, and then this and that. And it went through so many incarnations. It was two men, it was two women, it was a man and a woman. It was two pygmies, it was two flamingos, I don't know. It was insane. It just became, what combination is going to work? You know, it was a black guy, it was a white guy, it was an Eskimo, I don't know. It was just insane. Oh, you can't call them that anymore. Inuit, sorry. Apologies, Inuit land. So it was odd when it got made, and I'll tell you why, because it was a sort of typical studio thing of the director came on board, and I honestly, and I said this in the book, I said, I can't remember his name, and I'm too lazy to look it up because I just can't be bothered, because I just thought he was so badly directed, a hack. And now he'll sue me, and I don't care, because I didn't name him. And he hired his own writer, which is fine. Everyone's entitled to do that. And the most puzzling thing about it was that they took out every memorable scene that was the things that had sold the script numerous times. People said, oh, this is our favorite scene, this is great, this is it. All the big set-piece scenes that you want in a movie like that, the big comedy scenes, the big action scenes, the big ones that people go away remembering, they cut them all out. And I don't know whether it was for budgetary reasons or whatever. And then they decided to make it a comic kind of version of Training Day rather than what it was before. And we did, our participation was that we did actually facilitate the casting of Eugene Levy. That was definitely, because we were still nominally executive producers on it. So we had that, our finger in that pie to that extent. But nothing else. We had nothing else to do with it. So we saw the script, a couple of versions of the script as it kept changing, and just got more and more puzzled because you go, well, okay, this is interesting. They've sort of pared everything back to its bare minimum. It's a film now, but not one and we recognize a bit of it. And when I went to the premiere, I remember sitting there thinking, I recognize the characters because they seem familiar. I recognize some of the lines, and I recognize the plot because it was named roughly. But that was about it. It was almost like watching a movie that seemed vaguely familiar that someone I'd once seen, and I'd wandered into the theater and gone into the wrong movie theater and was seeing a movie that I hadn't intended to see, but I'll watch it anyway. And it came and it went, and it wasn't offensively bad, and it wasn't particularly good. And I remember thinking how detached I was from, and partly because, as I say, I had written this first draft 17 years before. So, I probably should look at that film again because I don't remember an awful lot about it now, except there were just endless fart and shit jokes and sort of dick jokes. And by the way, I will state for the record, I'm as big a fan as fart and dick jokes and shit jokes and all that as the next man. But I do think they have to be used judiciously and in the right context. So that's my little homily on the man.
Awesome. I also want to talk about your writing and acting credits on Family Tree and Mascots.
Yeah, that was with Chris, guest. That was interesting that we'd done For Your Consideration in 2006. So say there was 3 years between Chris's films. And then I think that film didn't do as well as the others had, and it was a bit more esoteric and a bit more obtuse, and it didn't get quite the reception. And I think it sort of sent Chris into a bit of a shell, and he didn't do anything for 10 years. It was a long, it was close. No, maybe, it was maybe about that. Maybe about that. A little less, I'm exaggerating, 6 years. This all becomes a blur. And I got a call from him out of the blue saying, I've got this idea for a film and I just talk to you, thought. So we went to lunch and he explained that he had been looking into his own family tree. I guess that's part of what he'd been doing for 6 years or 7 years or however many. And then he said, so he explained it and talked. He said, what do you think? And I said, I really like that arena because obviously it's very popular, Ancestry.com and Who Do You Think You Are and all those shows. I said, but I don't think it's a movie. I think it's got to be a TV series because a family tree by its nature has branches and it's episodic. There's not one story or one through line, especially as you're dealing with different generations. So it's got to be more about somebody finding different bits of their family each week, and that becoming a story into itself. And I think he agreed right away. And then we kind of ended up playing around with it over the course of a few months. And we came up with some ideas that made us laugh, a lot of things that made us laugh that had nothing to do with it. We just sort of worked at a glacial pace, which was Chris generally does, and I do the opposite. So I was kind of good for me to slow down a bit. And then we decided to take it out and then set it up, which we did with a friend of his wife, Jamie Lee Curtis's, called Deborah Oppenheimer, who worked at NBC Universal International. And so we went and sold it in England to the BBC and then came back and we sold it to HBO. And we then did the first season of 8 episodes, and I have to say that experience of writing those 8 episodes with the Culver Studios in LA was probably the most fun writing. It was a very, very happy time, and the making of the show was happy in my memory. I really enjoyed it, and I think Chris, at the end of it, said that he felt that some of his best work ever was in that scene. And there's one scene in particular he singled out. He said, I think the best. I said, I'm not sure I can ever top the cleverest and funniest shots. And I think he's right. He's written so many he's directed great things, and he said, I don't think I can direct a funnier scene or a more original one. So we're both very proud of it, and we would have done a second season. BBC and HBO both wanted to, but it was a complicated financial setup, and it was an expensive show, more than it should have been. And I think it was NBC Universal International that finally could cover the deficit. And so it sort of fell apart. And I think I was certainly really disappointed because I think that we had a great second set up in our heads. And we had a fantastic twist at the end that we both loved. And whether it was at the end of the second or third or fourth or fifth season, whatever, we knew how we were going to end it. And that's always a good place to be because you can work backwards. But I think I would recommend, people say, what are your stuff are you proud of? And I would recommend, of the stuff I've written, that would be something that were right at the top of my list that I'd say I'm proud of that and I stand by that. And it's a slow burn, it doesn't get sort of super funny in the first episode and then it keeps gaining and gaining. And I could highly recommend. And then the second thing we did was we wanted to write again together after that. And we did Mascots for Netflix, a film that sort of originated because I wanted to do a documentary about football mascots in England, professional soccer. And Chris and I both were amused by sports mascots. And I wanted to do this documentary in England, and Chris, I think, was going to executive produce it. And then I discovered how little money you make making documentaries. And so I kind of went off the idea and I said to Chris, look, how about we think about doing a fictitious World Mascot Championship competition and doing a movie based on that idea with a similar structure to Best in Show, where you sort of start meeting the people and then a bit of their journey and them arriving and then the competition. So instead of a dog show competition, you have a mascot competition. And it's just, it's got a wonderful visual element, because you've got all these adults who should know better in stupid costumes and people taking it terribly seriously, in these stupid outfits. And it was, again, I think it's a fun movie. It did very, very well for me. And what was fun too was that because the Chris's acting troupe of improvisers and great comic actors, had aged a bit. We were all a bit longer. Well, not me, because I was actually one of the junior members, but everyone was quite a bit older. And so we had to bring in some young blood because it was just unrealistic, 50s, 70s, to be mascot. So we added some wonderful young Sarah Baker Woods, Susan Yeagley, and the various people. And they were all great, and they all took to it like a duck to water and in costume. And I think it's a very good film. I mean, if you like that, it's very similar in structure, and it's got some wonderfully silly and
awesome. I am definitely a fan of it, and I mean all your stuff with Christopher Guest. I just think it's hilarious. I love dry humor, and it's very, very, very funny stuff.
Well, good, thank you. I've often been accused of having a very, very, which I'm not really aware of. I mean, I think it's dry-ish, but by American standards, it's really dry. But boy, if you want to talk about dry, Chris, he 10 times me. He's the most poker face. Yeah, his sense of his bone dry.
Awesome. Well, please, if you're having fun on swimming in the bowl, please tell Christopher that I'm a huge fan, and I would love the chance to interview him as well.
I would, but I think it's unlikely. Chris doesn't like doing an awful lot of stuff like that. I think he's probably now more interested in fishing and playing golf and riding his bicycle and stuff. I don't think he ever really enjoyed the promotion circuit or the interview. You might have a tougher time than you think. I've seen him at Q&As after movies with people crawling away with their tails between their legs. So, be careful what you wish for is all I can say there, and I love Chris dearly.
One thing I wanted to ask you about is some of your voiceover work.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, and I have a best friend from high school who's going to freak over this because he is obsessed with Metal Gear Solid.
Mm.
He got me into the games, and I'm a big fan of that stuff as well because, of course, it's based on Snake Plissken from Escape from New York, John Carpenter, and I'm a huge John Carpenter fan. I was wondering, how did you get cast as Major Zero?
It's a good question. I wish I could remember. It must have been a voice audition, I would think, and then I got cast. And I ended up being one of the principal roles, and they did several spin-offs, so they got their monies. I don't play those games, so I talk at great length. I mean, someone asked me just literally 2 or 3 days ago, they sent me some pictures and said of Major Zero, and could I sign them and attach some quotes on each one, just put a quote on the lines. And I couldn't remember a single line. I couldn't remember a single line. It was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
So I had to go online to look up what my lines were, and that's quite a good line now. I don't remember it at all. Those jobs you go in and you work solidly for, I think I worked on that for about 8 days solid, because there's an awful lot of stuff of direction. And I couldn't remember it. Not unusual with that. You don't even learn it. I do remember liking David, who played Snake, who was a fellow writer. And so we would chat about writing. I think he wrote one of the X-Men movies. I mean, he was much more into that comic book, a bit more. But I remember liking him very much and chat recordings. And then I got a little bit pissed off with it because they came back many years later and asked me. I did that movie for the same amount of money as everybody else did. I think really little, comparatively, it was well paid. But I was kind of annoyed because it hadn't just made millions; it made billions of dollars. And I felt that they were greedy. I didn't think that they had shared anything with the people that made it so good, the cast. So when they came back, my career had also taken off by the time they came back. It was far better known on camera. And when they kind of came back and said we want to do it, I was like, yeah, sure. I enjoyed doing that. And, my age, I said to my agent, obviously, they're going to have to pay a lot more of this, especially as the last one was so popular. And they came back and offered me a third of the amount of money I'd made the first time. So there was a quick, short answer to that. And then finally they came back because my agent said, no, not even considering it. And then they offered half what I'd been paid before. And I said, why would they do that? And their reasoning was, because my agent said, he's much better known now. Why would you think you could get away with paying? And they said, yeah, but no one's going to see his face. And I'm going, no shit. No one's going to see my face. Well done. You've understood the world of voiceover. So anyway, there was a very, very short answer to their query about whether, and I didn't do it. I was just on principle. And I don't mind telling people, I've done interviews before, and people go, why you weren't the recent one as Major Zero? That's the reason why.
I can totally understand that, and I respect that.
Thank you. I've had people say exactly the same, and I've had fans of it going, oh, yeah, actors get so spoiled, they get so overpaid. And trust me, they don't, considering if I had done that as an on-camera film, that first one, with the size of the role I had and what that film made, I'd own a private island by now, my own plane. I'd own a country. And so for them to have got away with paying me, a few mortgage payments, I thought was fine, but then reward people. I mean, the general rule in films is if you do a sequel, then people get rewarded, and they all make a lot of money if a sequel to a film that did really well. And so I didn't really appreciate that, and I'm quite honest about it in the book. I don't pull any punches. I do all the time. I mean, I was honest with myself in the book, and I'm generally very generous and very praiseworthy of almost everybody I've worked with, and have good stories about them all, but there are 3 people I eviscerate, and 2 of them are very well known and still very well known, and one's dead, so they can't sue me. But I feel like, bad behavior's got to be called out. It's got to be.
I definitely agree with that. You got to give respect to get respect, basically.
Yeah. There's a very strange noise on this phone line. I hope it's not interfering with your lovely podcast.
I think we're okay. I mean, I don't hear anything on mine except my cat that just came in.
I think this is my landline. It's probably about 60,000 years old, this phone, so it's probably me. She can never be bothered to update it. I don't even know why I have a landline anymore. I mostly just get junk calls. Anyway, enough about my phones. More about you, because this is your show, and we talk so little about you, and I feel remiss.
Well, I have to just promote myself real quick. I just had actually 3 screenplays make it into the Southern California screenwriting competition. And,
wonderful.
And 2 made it to the finals.
Fantastic.
I was very happy about that. It's definitely not easy to do. On the subject of television writing, I'm currently writing a zombie comedy that I own the rights to from winning a competition. The rough draft is published on Amazon as an ebook. And the working title for the show is called Grr, a Zombie Love Story.
Well, there you go. We got your plug-in, too.
Yeah. So go purchase. It's available. I think you get a hard copy as well. Very, very funny stuff if you're a George Romero fan.
There you go.
But, yeah. I wanted to ask you, and it's one thing that I think you mentioned in your book, and that's being dissed by Larry David.
Yeah, the story's in there. I'll do it's a teaser rather than a spoiler alert. Yes, there is a story there. It was early in my career, and I'll leave it at that. Actually, I'll leave it at that. So, one of the things I do in the book is I rehabilitate certain people. I actually don't dish the dirt at all, and the people I've worked with who have reputations of being difficult, A-list people, and I found them to be the exact opposite. And in fact, one of the book chapters is about, I start off by saying, here's a list of 10 A-list actors or actresses I've worked with, 9 I adored, and 1 was a 4 asterisk. And I then eliminate one by one who the people I adored were, and people were very surprised when they read this, because they were like, oh, I was certain it was going to be this person, because they're so awful, and no, I'm just certain it's that person. Again, I think you can only judge people by how your interaction with them and how it was. And In many cases, I think people will be surprised. They go, oh, I thought they would be dreadful. And then there's others who are obvious that people are not surprised at all. And that one of them is probably the person you mentioned.
Awesome. I have 2 closer questions for you.
Yes.
'Cause we are about at that time. My first one is, do you have any other upcoming projects to promote? And the second one is, just in general, what are some of your favorite films?
Well, the only thing I've got coming up that I can promote is, as I said, the Queen Mary film, which I think is going to be very interesting. And I love that role because I got to be villainous and heroic. And then I have a film that's about to start shooting, hopefully early summer, I think. It's been a hell of a job getting start dates because of COVID and various things. But that's with Jeremy Irons. It's basically an English, I'd say that's simplifying it, saying it's an English Seabiscuit, but it's the story of the most successful racehorse in English history and its extraordinary owner and extraordinary trainer who defied all the odds in many, many ways. It's a great life story and it's a great sports story. And that is due to star trainer, mini driver playing his wife. And I'll probably pop up in a small role in that. But that probably would. Now, favorite films of all time. God, I always go blank when people ask me that because, there's the obvious ones. I'm not, and this is good because it's not, we're two peas in a pod. I'm not a big sci-fi person. I've never seen Star Wars. I like certain sci-fi stuff or stuff, but generally it's not on the top of my list. I kind of like films that are about grittier and more about the real world I live in, but that's just my taste. I think I see the mythical quality of certain other worlds that totally divorced from the one we live in, and so I totally get it. It's just, again, it's not something I read a lot of or I have been drawn to write or is a world that I inhabit that often. But when I do see them, I'm going, oh my God, that's really fun. I remember Lord of the Rings I'd never read and quite a voracious reader, and I saw one of the films and thought it was fantastic. I love this. So it's not that I have a prejudice against it. It's just not where I would probably pick my top films. I mean, obviously, Godfathers 1 and 2 are terrific, classic. 3 is not so, less so. There's so many great films. I mean, in terms of comedy, there's a sort of a cult classic that I think if you ask a lot of comedians and comic actors, they will say the same thing. And I know Steve Martin was in this category and many, many, many other people. There's a British film called Withnail and I, Withnal, Withnail and I. And it's a very dark comedy about 2 actors, late 60s. It wasn't done in and it was where Richard E. Grant launched his career. And he gives what I think is one of the great comic performances I've ever seen on film. And to this day, it's the film I've seen the most, more than any other film. And the people who love that film, it's like a bit like Monty Python. They can quote you, 50 lines from that film because it is absolutely chock full of extraordinary, memorable, unusual comic book. So I would say that in terms of comedy, would be very high up on my list. I'll tell you why I don't retain kind of lists over time, and I should, is because each year I get sent probably 100 screeners for awards season. And so that new 100 wipes out the memory of the ones I've seen the year before. And so I sort of, if people go, did you like this? It was 5 years ago, 8 years ago, I go, yeah, I loved it, but I've completely forgotten about it. But I will tell you the 2 films that I loved outstandingly this year were not ones that, one of them has actually gotten quite a lot of attention. One is, I think it's Swedish, maybe Norwegian. That's awful. I don't know. It's a Nordic country anyway. But I just thought the film was absolutely brilliant. It was called Worst Person in the World. And it was definitely the best drama I saw from 2021, the worst person in the world. And the woman in it who plays the lead role, it's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary performance. And the film is extraordinary in so many ways. It's the director is a genius. And it deals with stuff that is very, very relatable. So I highly recommend that. And then oddly, because I'm not a massive, let's say in foreign films, I'm not one of those kind of foreign film snobs, the best comedy I thought from last year was an Italian film called The Hand of God, which I thought was equally as impressive, laugh out loud funny, and really life-affirming. So those are the 2 films I would recommend people could try and catch, and I'm sure that they're available in, your streaming services by now. The Worst Person in the World and The Hand of God. And I think The Worst Person in the World has got some major attention and will probably be up for Academy Awards and possibly The Hand of God also. So I'm not alone, and just in case people were wondering if I've lost my mind.
Awesome. Well, Jim, I want to let you know that I still have a very long list of questions to ask. So if you're all for it, I would love to have you on the show for round 2 to discuss more of your awesome career and behind the scenes and everything.
I shall absolutely do that if you can prove that every one of your listeners bought my book.
Done.
Then I will do it. And I hope you do. Please buy the book. You won't be disappointed. I'm very, very shy about putting things I've been in or written in case people don't relate to them. And I feel very confident this has been heartily endorsed by 36, I believe, maybe more, major names in the business who have read it and said extremely kind things. And I do think it's a very relatable and fun book. I think you will enjoy it. It's chock full of funny stories, silly stories, embarrassing stories. And it's if you like show business, you'll love it. Don't like show business, I think you'll still love it.
Awesome. Well, I, for one, am going to purchase the book, and I cannot wait to read it and hear all the behind-the-scenes cool stuff.
Yes, and how I got caught with my pants down, not just once, just twice, but 3 times, literally, as well as metaphorically. There you go. How's that for a tease?
Perfect.
All right. Be well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You do the same.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm now going to crash for the weekend. I've done my shift this week. All right.
Sounds good. I'm going to do the same.
All right, pal. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.